there, everyone, and welcome to GamePoints episode 326. Your weekly get-together, we're talking about recent gaming news. As always, your host, Stephen Brown, and tonight, we have a whole mess of Assassin's Creed games on their way. More than just Mirage, which we talked about last week, it seems. Cyberpunk 2077 is going to get its first major story expansion, and there are just teases all over the place for upcoming things. Whatever Konami might have, some Nintendo Direct rumors, all rumors, but we'll get into that and more before the show is over with. But first, I want everyone here to know this is an audience interactive podcast. So if you're watching here live Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time over at Twitch TV/GamePoints, or later over on any myriad of video hosting platforms, be they YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, etc., feel free to join the conversation with any questions, comments, concerns you might have. Just try to keep them germane to the topics on hand. Now, if I seem a little bit more short of breath and just beaten down than normal, it is because it is currently 105 degrees at 8 p.m. where I'm at right now. And I am in a room with no air conditioning at the moment because it picks up on the mic. So I have to have everything shut off. But god damn is it hot. And since California is a hell state, I might even have a blackout before the show's over with. So if I go poof, you know why. Mike No Play, good to have you. We're about to ask about them beans. What beans? I don't know what beans you're talking about. I have no idea. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into the news of the week. And I'm hesitant to call this actually news because most of it is just rumor and speculation. However, all of this rumor and speculation is coming from like your industry mainstays. Like Jeff Grubb, Jason Schreier, Tom Henderson, is that his name? Tom Henderson, Tryhard Guides. Yeah, Tom Henderson. Emily, last name I can't remember right now. Nintendo girl, forgive me. I'm sorry. All links of this will be provided down below. But they are coming out and announcing all kinds of stuff that might be moving within the next week or so, and I think it's important to discuss it. Normally, I just ignore this stuff, but it's a lot of it. It's coming in real fast. I will caveat all of this by saying that this is all technically rumors and speculation, but they come from noted leakers who tend to have a good track record of all of this. So let's start up first off with Jeff Grubb essentially saying that there's going to be a Nintendo Direct sometime next week. What's going to be in it, we don't really know for sure. It makes sense if they have Splatoon coming out this week, because that does release in a couple of days, that they might want to try to follow up with future plans for that, as well as say, hey, this is what we have coming up for the holiday season. Emily, god damn it, I can't remember her last name. It's going to drive me nuts. But another Nintendo leaker, Emily, it's going to drive me nuts. I can't remember her name now. Is saying that they've gone nuts with the remasters, so that you could potentially expect announcements from Wind Waker HD, Metroid Prime HD. There's, I think Tom Henderson said FX or F-Zero GX was coming. Emily Rogers, yes, thank you, chat. God damn. It was driving me nuts. I couldn't remember her name. Emily Rogers, Tom Henderson, a couple other people have come out and said that Nintendo's gone ham with the remasters. So I wouldn't be surprised that if this Direct is true, which Jeff Grubb is saying, that all these remasters, like I said, Wind Waker, Metroid Prime, F-Zero GX, maybe Twin Snakes, given what Konami might be doing. God forbid you remaster Eternal Darkness. I don't think that would happen, though. Might be coming around the corner. You also have Konami, speaking of the survival horror stuff, coming out of the woodwork with Video Game Chronicle. Let me, not Nintendo GameCube. Haha, with Video Game Chronicle here, coming out saying that Konami is going to be announcing a new game from a series loved around the world at Tokyo Game Show. Now, Tokyo Game Show is next week, and we'll get into the exact dates later. I think it's like the 15th to something. I have the dates written down for a later segment. But anytime Konami comes out and says they're going to announce a new game from a beloved series, everyone goes to one of two mindsets, understandably so. Metal Gear or Silent Hill. Now, what's annoying about the Silent Hill stuff is it's a poorly kept secret that they're working on not just one Silent Hill thing, but multiple properties in that franchise. Bloober's working on something. I heard that Annapurna is working on something. I don't think this is going to be any of that. I'm hearing that this is going to be a smaller thing. Don't expect a brand new game. I'd expect something like how we got Castlevania Collection and Contra Collection. I'd expect something like along the lines of one of those. This could be those Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, and 3 remasters, not remakes, but remasters that we're hearing going around. Something to keep in mind is that this event is going to be hosted by the Japanese voice actor from a couple characters from Suikoden. So maybe they're doing something with Suikoden. Maybe they're porting them up to modern day consoles, put them on the PlayStation Plus or the Xbox Live, well, Game Pass. I keep wanting to call it Games of Live or whatever the hell it's called now. Could be one of those, which would be awesome. I would love to have Suikoden 2 remastered, so I can not even remastered, just port it over so I can actually play it without busting open the copy there. That's the kind of level I would expect from this. Not a remake, not a new game, but just not even necessarily a remaster. Just hey, this is on Steam now, or hey, you can buy this now digitally on PlayStation, Sony, or PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch. The reason why I lean a little bit towards Suikoden is because it was just announced that they renewed the trademark about a month and a half ago. But that companies renew trademarks on things all the time, so that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Although the timing would be kind of cool. They could be going out. It was either about to expire, or they re-upped it in time for whatever's coming up. Who knows? But I would keep your expectations tempered for this one. Do not expect Silent Hill 2 remake or Metal Gear Solid 6. Don't expect any of that stuff. Keep it small. I expect a collection of games. I would even be shocked if it was a Metal Gear collection. I do lean a little bit more toward like a Suikoden thing, just to bring back the old RPGs. Also, not to be outdone, Marvel's teasing their own shit, and Millier on Twitter came out essentially saying, hey, expect Spider-Man 2 on PS5 footage soon. It makes sense because Marvel's doing a big showcase later this week where they're going to be talking about the future of Marvel and Disney games. You'll probably see maybe a wee bit of Spider-Man 2 footage on there as well. Like I said, all the big leakers are coming out saying, hey, all this footage is coming soon-ish. On top of all of that, last week we mentioned Assassin's Creed Mirage. That more or less got leaked out by someone, the name, the setting, etc. Well, Tom Henderson over at Tryhard Guides said it's more than just Assassin's Creed Mirage that's coming. Mirage that's coming. And this would explain all the weird contradictory statements we're hearing from studios, because it's not just one game, but 5 or so. Whole bunch of stuff. And Ubisoft is doing a forward this weekend, talking specifically about Assassin's Creed. They got the big media blitz going on right now. IGN with their live-action Assassin's Creed trailer and all that good stuff. So they're really pushing this forward coming up. I'd expect a lot of information on what this series' future is going to be. And it seems we might finally have some settings to tie together with the code names. Not just Tom Henderson has mentioned this, by the way. There's a new leaker on town who showed a whole bunch of images on Twitter. I don't think the snitch has talked about it, but there is more stuff that's coming. Let's see. So, during this Assassin's Creed forward coming up, they are expected to announce the following games. Assassin's Creed Mirage, which is the one we talked about last week. That's going to be set in Baghdad. This sounds like a traditional Assassin's Creed game, whatever the current iteration of that is. This seems to be your mainline entry on that. And then you also have Assassin's Creed Project Red, which is supposed to have a Japanese setting, which explains why we're hearing all those Japanese rumors for a while. Then you have Assassin's Creed Project Hexa, which is supposedly supposed to be in a Central European setting where you're hunting down witches. That sounds kind of awesome to me. I'm definitely down for that one if that's the case. You have Assassin's Creed Project Jade, which is going to be a mobile game set in China. And Assassin's Creed Project Nexus, which is supposed to be VR focused. Makes total sense with the theme of the games, given the whole Animus situation. I can totally see them doing something like that. And then, of course, Valhalla might be having some more DLC as well. Let's take a look at chat here. Yeah, I've been trying to understand news about Assassin's Creed, and I didn't understand a single thing. Yeah, that's because I think multiple people had contradicting information, because I don't think anyone really realized they're working on like 7 or 8 Assassin's Creed projects. I know that number keeps getting higher every time I say it. people forget how many studios Ubisoft has because they just name them all after the city, Ubisoft City. So like Ubisoft Shanghai, Ubisoft Quebec, Ubisoft Cambodia. I know it's not. No, there might be a Cambodia. I don't know. And that I know it's a country, not a city. I digress. It's hard to keep track of all of Ubisoft studios because they all work on everything. They all support each other nonstop. And Ubisoft, it was until very recently kind of a churn factor. Every year you would have your yearly entry into the series. They have since dialed back on that quite a bit. I've gone on several episodes recently about what the hell's happened at Ubisoft because they've been very quiet. It sounds like that is about to change. And then to wrap all of this up, there even might be a state of play sometime next week. I keep hearing September 8th as a date floated around. This was supposed to be sometime in August, but it got delayed behind the scenes, allegedly. And now supposedly has been moved up to September 8th, which would be 2 days from today. So, everything that I've just spent 10 minutes or so talking about, all rumor, all speculation, all anonymous sourced. Keep that in mind when you talk about this and share this kind of thing. However, Emily Rogers, Tom Henderson, Jeff Grubb, these are people who tend to know their shit. They are insiders. They have those connections. So when they say something, I tend toward believing that it is true. Tend to believe, because sometimes things change behind the scenes. Sometimes they may get outdated information, or they could get information and shit, plan changes. Dates get moved. For all intents and purposes, I hear we should have had a state of play in August, and we didn't because shit got moved. So keep those things in mind. But it sounds like we are going to be bombarded with information over the month of September. And it's about time, because this year's E3 was lackluster, to say the least. The summer of gaming, while I do enjoy Jeff Keighley, I think he's a general net positive for the industry. This year's Summer of Gaming Fest, or whatever the hell it's called, was very bare, to say the least. And the recent opening night live at Gamescom was also kind of Spartan as well, despite being 2 hours. So we still have no idea what the hell is coming over the rest of the year into next year, besides a few major key titles. Hopefully, we'll have some of this stuff at least answered, be it delayed till next year or announced a month or two from now. Anyways, let me know what you think about all this stuff down below. What do you think might be coming up? Do you believe the veracity of any of these? Do you think that these people are spot off their claims? Are you excited for any of this stuff? I know I went through a whole bunch of rumors in a very short time, but I want to know what you guys think. Moving on, this is the big news story of the day, as it were. Actual news, not rumor. Via IGN here, Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty is going to be the first expansion. I should clarify, the first story content expansion. We've all those little mini patches and DLC updates. Essentially, here's an extra car, here's some extra clothes, maybe a gig or two. But we're getting our first big content infusion from CD Projekt Red over their ill-fated Cyberpunk 2077. Now, are you excited for it? I don't know. I still have yet to really fully play this game. I played it for a few hours and immediately went, this is not what I was promised, and shut it off. And it was also riddled with bugs and issues throughout. I keep hearing that this might, while not at the level of No Man's Sky, this has apparently gone through many upgrades and cleaning up and polishing, and it's a decent game now. And it does have a fan base of people who love this son of a bitch. So, congrats, you guys are getting an actual story expansion. It does sound along the lines of Heart of Stone or Blood and Wine from The Witcher 3. CD Projekt Red is one of the few studios that I could think of that actually does the old school PC expansion pack. We all remember Brood War or Opposing Force on Half-Life, Blue Shift, all that stuff. But the expansion pack has kind of gone by the wayside in favor of season passes and battle passes and just random DLC, which this is kind of more or less a glorified DLC, don't get me wrong. But it's just meatier than you would typically find in those, it sounds like. Anyways, to the article itself, or at least let me get you some bits and pieces from the article. The expansion is called Phantom Liberty and will be released only on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S, or the Xbox Series game systems, and PC. This kind of solidifies my thought that the reason why this game had so many issues and so many things seemed cut and things were like just rushed out is that CD Projekt Red was trying to make this run on previous gen systems and it fucked them hard. So I'm glad to see them cut bait on that and go, hey, this is just a next gen expansion pack only. No word on whether it's going to be standalone that I know of. I didn't read that deep into the details, unfortunately. I'd be very curious about that. At least in my glance through it, didn't. It was announced during the Night City Wire live stream earlier this morning, and it marks the first major expansion to content in Cyberpunk 2077. I swear I can read. I swear I can. My problem is I'm trying to read here and my notes at the same time, and it's causing issues. Keanu Reeves is apparently coming back as Johnny Silverhand in the expansion. He has a whole bunch of new voice lines and motion cap, and he didn't do motion cap, but he did do a bunch of voice lines for it, so he will be featured in the expansion. And apparently he takes issue because one of the scenes is the main character V swearing allegiance to the new United States of America. Whether or not that's actually going to be a full-fledged faction or just one or two missions involving them, who knows? But when your expansion is called Phantom Liberty, I would imagine that the dealing with the government of the new United States of America is probably central to the theme. Take a look at chat here. I really like Cyberpunk. This is still not enough to make up for the game was at launch. Also hasn't been like 2 years. I think something like this would have had to be released a lot sooner. I understand why it would have taken them 2 years to launch because of the state the game was released in to begin with. Now, I still am in the boat that no matter how much you patch this game, it will never be what was originally promised, because to get what was originally promised would have to undergo massive, fundamental changes to the actual game itself. They're not things that you can patch in and out of. But I'm kind of feeling like I want to give this game a second shot now that it's had about a year and a half or so to marinate, to iron out the bugs and all that stuff. Reinstall it on the PC, give it another 5 hours, see if it doesn't wet my whistle, because while it wasn't what I was promised, I did enjoy the world as riddled with problems as it was. There is something there. There is. And I'm hoping that if I return to it, maybe give it a couple months, because this expansion won't come out until sometime next year. Maybe to get a couple months, maybe try it over December. I don't necessarily want to, oh no, I got some stuff coming out in December too. Maybe sooner than that. I do want to take another look at this game, and just give it an old college try again and see if I don't embrace it more than I did. Way too many people have said it's been cleaned up since its launch. I'm very curious to know exactly what has changed. And as I said, there was something there. Underneath all the problems and cut features and things that I was expecting was something nice, was a little nugget of entertainment. And I'm kind of reminded a little bit, I don't want to necessarily make this comparison, but I'm going to. When Red Dead Redemption 2 first came out, it was just, it bounced off of me hard. Not that it was a bad game, not that it was in the state that Cyberpunk is in, but it just something about it didn't click with me. But I knew that there was something there. And then I went back to it a few months ago, so a couple years after its release, played through it and went, holy shit, this is amazing. I'm wondering if I will have that same experience here. Well, when I first sat down and played it, I bounced off of it. It wasn't doing it for me, but I recognized that there was something entertaining there. And if I come back a few years, in this case later, to take another look at it, maybe, now that I know what I'm getting to, I'll enjoy it more than I did. Much like with Red Dead Redemption 2. Once again, not comparing the quality of those two games. Not even close. Just my experience with them. So yeah, a new Cyberpunk expansion coming. I like the idea of a new United States of America. I always am curious about what the government's role in these new worlds are that are taken over by corporations. Sometimes they don't exist. Sometimes they exist in name only. And in other cases, they are actually a force to be reckoned with, where the corporations might be more powerful, but you still don't necessarily want to poke the hive. Very curious to see what their take is on this. Next up on the docket, we go to Video Game Chronicle. The Quarry director says his next game will be just as big and can deviate from teen horror. I'm excited for that. I really enjoy Supermassive Games stuff. I like the Dark Pictures games. Some I like more than others. I'm really looking forward to The Devil Inside Me coming out soon. The Quarry, it was what it was. You have to understand that that was essentially an aborted Stadia game that was brought back from the depths and put out on console. So I get why some aspects of that felt budget, because it was. Also, Supermassive has always had that budget feel to me outside of Until Dawn, which was very well polished. But Supermassive has always been the gaming equivalent of like a Full Moon video to me. You know, those direct to DVD videos in the 90s that you would go and rent. They wouldn't be theater, but they wouldn't be like theater quality, but they would be an entertaining weekend to spend with some friends watching some schlock. That's what Supermassive has always been to me, and their games represent that. They tend to be cheaper, they tend to be lower budget, they tend to be quicker with a much faster turnaround as well, figuring they're able to crank out a Dark Pictures game about once every 9 to 12 months or so. So I'd be very curious to see what they can do if they move away from the teen horror, but still keep it as big as The Quarry or Until Dawn. Dark Picture stuff being a smaller, more contained experiences. Let's go to the article itself. Speaking to Video Game Chronicle in a recent interview, studio director Will Biles, who directed both Supermassive's larger horror games, confirmed it was his intention to continue creating full-scale narrative adventures in the same genre. So, still keeping with the horror themes. Specifically discussing his next project, Biles said it would be the equivalent in size to this year's The Quarry, which was published by 2K, and suggested that it could deviate from the teen horror explored in its last two releases. We've started working on the next game, he said. I really can't tell you very much at all about it, but we have started. Again, it's the same sort of horror genre, and we're sticking to that. It's equivalent in size of The Quarry, and that's about as much as I can say without giving too much away. He then added, potentially, it might be a little bit like, I don't know how far we can stretch the teen horror thing out further, because especially when we try to stir it up, the number of surprises you can add to that become limited. The Dark Pictures explores hundreds of variants of the horror genre, and we're looking at that now. I can't tell you exactly what it is, but it's a bit of diversion away from that sort of standard, but still very much classic horror. So he's essentially saying we're going to keep it in horror, but not teen slasher anymore. You can only do so many Screams or Nightmare on Elm Street or whatever, etc. I would love a science fiction horror game from these guys. I would love Supermassive's take on Alien, not Aliens, Alien, or something equivalent to that, where it's you have your cast of people and they are being stalked by some unknown horror on a space station, but move it away from the teen comedy, the teen slasher film. Get away from the Screams, get away from the Friday the 13th. Give me something, like I said, like Alien or Life, that movie with Ryan Reynolds or something in it. Underwater, the movie with Kristen Stewart. Give me that. Give me that, or give me something, I don't know, cosmic horror-y. Set it during World War I, where you're fighting in the trenches and some unknowable entity is picking off members of your squad. Or if you want to set it more modern day, something like Dog Soldiers. Give me something like that and make it a full game, not just for Dark Pictures, but a Until Dawn level of quality game. And I say Until Dawn specifically because The Quarry, while it had its cool moments, also looked atrocious at times. You need to polish this shit up. I will fully say that. I'm glad to see that they're still doing their thing. I think they're very good at their thing. I do think that they have a mixed track record on some things. For example, Little Hope I thought was not good. Man of Dan was solid, and House of Ashes was great. If you want my ranking on those. And Until Dawn, of course, I think Until Dawn out Quantic Dream. And we'll be having some more news on them later as well. I love this genre for some reason. And I'm not talking about specifically horror. I'm talking about this almost non-interactive storytelling that they do. Not even like Telltale, for example, cranked out all their Walking Dead stuff. Tales from the Borderlands, Wolf Among Us, etc. And I kind of grew tired of that, but something about the Supermassive games I am yet to be bored with. Been disappointed by some, but not bored by others. Let's see. Let's take a look here. Chat saying there was a horror game set in World War One. I remember seeing the trailer some years ago and haven't heard a thing about. Yes, I saw. There's a couple of things like that I saw. There's one that was like a top-down indie game, and it was being made by one person, and I don't remember what it was called. You also had some games recently use World War One as a horror-ish setting. Death Stranding, for example, had its trench warfare scenes. You had the Darkness, not necessarily a recent game, but there's some scenes from Darkness that took place in World War One. But as far as video game goes, it's still a relatively unexplored period of time, and there's a lot of cool shit you can do during then, because you're at that industrial renaissance where you see things that we take for granted today, but was no time, like things like machine guns, tanks, early planes, a bunch of weird shit that was being invented at the time, weird for its time period. So imagine seeing a plane for the first time ever, and this is an invention that was maybe 5 years ago came out. I don't know when the plane was actually invented, but let's say 5 years. It's relatively new. You know a plane, but you actually haven't seen one. We were in that time. Radio really wasn't a thing yet. People forget how technologically stunted we were compared to now over 100 years. We have advanced rapidly. So you're in that time of unusual technology. And I think that can be really expanded upon. And I use unusual for the time period. We know what a tank is now. We know what a flamethrower is now. We know what a machine gun is now, and a plane, and a bomb, and mustard gas. All of this shit was unheard of at the time. So you can really lean into the fear of the unknown with World War I as a setting. Over the past few weeks, I have been talking about mergers and acquisitions. This is the sign of the times. I read that article from Bandai Namco gave about why they're doing it for defensive reasons. Those mergers and acquisitions have not slowed down yet, and I got 3 stories here, starting first up with Ubisoft, and about how Tencent has acquired a minority stake in the Guillemot Brothers Limited. Now, the Guillemot Brothers Limited is a company that is comprised of the Guillemot Brothers. These are the people that own Ubisoft, or at least the controlling stake of Ubisoft. This is their corporation that owns that controlling stake. So, to be clear, Tencent is not buying more of Ubisoft yet. We'll get into that in a second. But they're buying stake in the parent company that owns the majority stake of Ubisoft. It's like a Russian nesting doll. I understand if you're not keeping up. I'll try to explain as we go on. From this press release, which will be posted with this along all other stories somewhere down there if you want to read on your own. Ubisoft strengthens its core shareholding via the expansion of content around the group's founders to the benefit of long-term stability and development. Technobabble. We don't even need that first. We don't need that line here. What you need is right here. Tencent acquires a minority passive stake in Guillemot Brothers Limited. More or less, like I said. The expansion and the concert of Tencent further reinforces Ubisoft's core shareholding around its founders and provides a company with stability essential for its long-term development, said Yves Guillemot, CEO and co-founder of Ubisoft. That's Yves Guillemot coming out saying, we were in trouble and Tencent kind of saved our ass. You don't say it's going to provide stability if you were already stable. To kind of give you an idea of the chaos that might be going behind the scenes at Ubisoft. Tencent acquires a 49.9% economic stake with 5% voting rights in the Guillemot Brothers Limited. So they're buying just shy of half of the company. The Guillemot Brothers, I'd imagine, combined have more than that. But they probably have the 50.1% share. Meaning, technically, Tencent can't tell them what to do. Unofficially, however, Tencent can go, hey, we'll sell all of our stock and crash it if you don't do what we say. Which is kind of letting the wolf into the hen house. Tencent's investment in Guillemot Brothers Limited accounts to about £300 million. 200 million of that is share acquisitions and 100 million of its capital increase, at an implied valuation of Ubisoft at £80 per one share. In addition, Tencent is providing the Guillemot Brothers with a long-term unsecured loan to refinance its debt and provide additional financial resources that can be used to acquire equity in Ubisoft. That's what I'm talking about. They gave them a loan in addition to taking shares. So they kind of have them over the barrel a little bit. Guillemot Brothers Limited remains exclusively controlled by the Guillemot family, on paper. Tencent will not be represented on its board of directors and will not obtain any consent or veto rights over the business, once again, on paper. The Guillemot family concert with respect to Ubisoft extend to include Tencent. Whatever, who cares about that? The expanded concert may increase its stake to 29.9% of Ubisoft's capital or voting rights. Within this limit, Guillemot Brothers Limited and the Guillemot family may each increase their equity ownership of Ubisoft. What that means is that this company that owns part of Ubisoft can own more of Ubisoft now, up to 29.9% of it. Additionally, Ubisoft's board of directors has authorized Tencent to increase its direct stake from Ubisoft from 4.5% to 9.99% of capital voting rights. Right now, Tencent owns 4.5% of Ubisoft. They bought it back when Vivendi was wanting to try to take over Ubisoft in a hostile takeover. Tencent stepped in and kind of saved that from happening. Now, with the loan that they're giving to the Guillemot family company, part of that deal means they can double how much they own of Ubisoft, up to just shy of 10%. Tencent will not be able to sell its shares in the Ubisoft for a period of 5 years, and beyond will give the Guillemot family a right of priority. That essentially means that if they want to sell their shares, they must offer them to the Guillemot family first. And they will not be able to increase its stake in Ubisoft beyond 10% of Ubisoft's capital and voting rights for a period of 8 years. All right, so let's take a look at this. This means that Tencent is going to end up owning 10% of Ubisoft. You don't increase how much they can own if you don't have any intent of buying up to 10%. They also now own 49.9% of the company that owns 30% of Ubisoft. So if you work the math out, that's essentially roughly another 15%. Fuzzy math here, and you are going through some steps. But that means Ubisoft owns 25% of Tencent. They essentially also can put pressure on the Guillemot family through their loans that the Guillemots owe them to make that other 50.1%, which translates into another 15% of Ubisoft ownership, giving them direct control of 25% of the company, indirect control of 40% of the company. If my math is right here, by Tencent. So that means the CCP, which more or less directly controls Tencent, is a 40% stakeholder in the company that makes Tom Clancy games. And I can hear that man spinning in his grave over it right now. This is not good. Ubisoft is in a very precarious position. As I've said, the Guillemot family has some issues going on right now. I think turning to a loan with these conditions attached to it shows how much of a problem they're in. Remember, it's a loan. They have to pay that back. And I'm willing to bet that if they default on that loan, more shares of Ubisoft go to Tencent. That is a speculation that was not disclosed in this massive text of investor relations that I was able to see. If you guys want to go through it, I will, of course, link this down below. It's not good, though. I would rather Ubisoft have sold to Microsoft in its entirety than Tencent get another increased stake in it. You need to be fearful of Tencent. And speaking of being fearful of Tencent, let's move on to this next story from Gematsu. Tencent and Sony Interactive acquire collectively 30.34% of FromSoftware. Through third-party allotment, Six Joy Hong Kong, which is a Tencent subsidy, will own 16.25% of FromSoftware shares, and Sony Interactive Entertainment will own 14.09%. Kadokawa Corporation remains the largest shareholder of the company with 69.66% of the shares. This ties back to what we were talking about last week with Bandai Namco saying, hey, people are not just gobbling up companies in its entirety, but increasing their stake in them so that way they have a say in where games go. They have a say in who gets to buy what. These are protective measures because Elden Ring was so successful this year, shockingly so. That makes FromSoftware a prime acquisition target. Now, Sony might not have the money to necessarily buy them outright. In fact, they don't. Microsoft does, though. So, as a step toward protecting their interests in keeping FromSoftware games on Sony platforms, they increase their stake. Same with Tencent to a degree. Tencent is investing in FromSoftware because, once again, they are now a prime acquisition target. So you might as well put some money in them. So if they get bought out, you get a bigger return on your investment. It's a little bit more strategic for Sony to do so to help secure their games on their platforms in the future and to have some voting interest on whether or not we agree to be bought up or not. Tencent, it's just more of a smart move. But hey, it's best to have at least some skin in the game before the pawn gets taken off the table. And then finally, in the world of acquisitions and all that fun stuff, we have NetEase buying outright Quantic Dream. NetEase, one of China's leading internet and online game service providers, today announced that its games division has acquired Quantic Dream. Quantic Dream will become NetEase Games' first studio in Europe. Quantic Dream will continue to operate independently, focusing on creating and publishing its video games on all platforms, as well as supporting and publishing third-party developed titles, while at the same time leveraging NetEase's significant game development capabilities. Terms of the deal were not discussed. I am not as much of a hawk on NetEase as I am on Tencent. Doesn't mean I like this, though. I do not like any major conglomeration coming out of China because they have direct ties to the CCP and at a whim can do horrible things with all that data. Not that the United States can't, but at least there is some illusion of security there. If I have to pick between NetEase and Tencent, I pick NetEase every time, but I'd rather it be neither one of them. Once again, I would prefer Nintendo or Sony or Microsoft or EA or Activision about Quantic Dream. There's no way Sony's going to. They burnt that bridge a long time ago. But yeah, 3 major moves on the mergers and acquisition side of things, and this is still not going to be ending any time soon, especially as the global economy just slowly crumbles down around us. Expect more of these. All right, that wraps things up for the news. I do have some upcoming events I want to make everyone aware of. I have mentioned these throughout most of the show already, but let's get some exact times and dates on here. First up, Marvel and Disney's Game Showcase will be September 9th at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's where I'd expect some Spider-Man footage too to be shown, if indeed they were right about that. We have that Ubisoft Forward focusing around Assassin's Creed and its many, many games coming on September 10th at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. This is when everything should be announced. And by the way, I think this might be the first public official acknowledgement that it's called Assassin's Creed Mirage. I know we were talking about last week when it was leaked, but I think this is Ubisoft's first acknowledgement of them officially calling it Mirage. You have the Nippon Ichi Software Showcase coming September 7th, which is tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. This is essentially leaked already in its entirety. You can find that online if you're so inquired, or wait a couple hours and just go to YouTube and watch it from there. I like NIS. They do some cool stuff. I'm not necessarily a big super fan of those, but they get some interesting games. And then, of course, this is next week, but still important to mention, Tokyo Game Show running the 15th to the 18th. This is when we're expected to get all those Konami rumors, maybe some GameCube, some Nintendo rumors, rather, if they don't do their own independent direct next week, which would also time up with the alleged Sony State of Play next week, assuming all that is true, of course. It makes sense that they would do those during the week of Tokyo Game Show. Timing tracks up. We can't have one week go by where we don't have at least one delay, so let's go ahead and talk about how Sons of the Forest has been delayed yet again. From their Twitter, due to the scope of our new game, Sons of the Forest has been hard to pinpoint an exact release date, and today we have to delay the game one last time. Caveat, don't say one last time, because that means you're going to have to delay it again. Don't set yourself up for failure. Giving us time to complete the polish we feel is needed, we released the game February 23rd, 2023, priced at $30. This did have a nebulous October release because they're trying to get that Halloween market. They pushed it back. Don't say delay one last time because people will hold you to that. They will. I'm telling you, the constant delays, while some people, individual games, people don't mind a delay on. The collective malaise that has been the game industry delaying everything, however, is starting to wear on people's nerves. So don't make promises that you can't keep there. End night. I had to double check to see who the developer was. That does it for the news and upcoming events and delays, which leaves us finally with new releases. We had some good stuff coming out this week, by the way, too. First up, Gloomwood comes into early access on PC. Trapped in a dark Victorian city consumed by an ancient curse, you must plan your survival and dare an escape using nothing but stealth, an arsenal of eccentric weapons, and your wit in this haunting adventure inspired by the immersive sims and survival horror grades of the late 90s and early 2000s. This is being published by New Blood Interactive. These are the people that make the excellent Dusk amid evil. There's another big one that I'm thinking off the top of my head. They are stylizing this as Thief with Guns, and I'm super excited to play it. It has what I believe is the voice of Shodan and Victoria from the Thief series, Terry Brosses, as the antagonist. I think that's her. I kind of recognize it on the trailer. This is entering early access, so I'm not going to play it just yet. I want to play this when it fully comes out. Now, I could be fucking up here. It could be a great game that's only missing the last 2 levels, but I want the complete experience first. But you make your own decisions. Also out this week, Circus Electrique on the PlayStation, PS4, 5, PC, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and Nintendo Switch. Circus Electrique is a part story-driven RPG, part tactics, part circus management, and completely enthralling with a steampunk twist. When everyday Londoners mysteriously turn into vicious killers, only the show's talented performers possess the skills necessary to survive the city. This looks cool. It looks like part city/town management sim crossed with Darkest Dungeon. And I don't necessarily mean Darkest Dungeon in its themes or anything like that, but if you look at the combat, it does that thing where you have like 4 characters on one side, 4 characters on the other side, or 1 character in this case, and very simplistic commands on the bottom. It really put my mind to Darkest Dungeon when I saw the combat. The rest of it's its own standalone thing, though. Don't get that confused with the themes of Darkest Dungeon. I'm just comparing its gameplay from what I saw, and specifically the combat of the gameplay. Also out this week, Disney Dreamlight Valley on early access on PC. Explore a world filled with magic of Disney as you discover rich stories and build the perfect neighborhood alongside Disney and Pixar heroes and villains in this new life sim adventure game. This looks like Animal Crossing with a couple of adventure parts where you fight Disney villains. I get the distinct feeling this is probably going to make bank because you get to have your daughter or son play with Frozen, and Frozen's still immensely popular. And they're going to go fight Ursula and harvest some crops and plant some flowers and go talk to Gaston as he's like hitting on, I don't know. My Disney knowledge comes from the 90s. I haven't kept up with Disney in years, but you know what I'm saying. It really does seem to be Animal Crossing, Harvest Moon, Stardew Valley-ish with some action adventure platformer stuff. Not, I don't even say platformer, but with some adventure ideas thrown in. Also out this week, I'm really looking forward to this. Steel Rising on the PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X. It is Paris, 1789. The French Revolution has been suppressed with bloodshed by Louis XVI and his merciless mechanical army. Aegis, a mysterious automaton masterpiece, must confront the king's army alone to save history in this challenging action RPG. This looks fucking amazing. It's being made by Spiders. These are the guys that did Greedfall. And they've done some more questionable stuff in the past, like Mars Warlogs, Techromancer. But every time they do a game, it gets better. And Greedfall was amazing. Really looking forward to what they do here. It's one of those action RPGs. I am loath to compare it to something like Dark Souls. But it seems to be a little bit more on the slow plundering side than, say, Devil May Cry. This comes out this week. I will be streaming this on Thursday if I get a chance to. Really, really excited to finally play this game. Looking forward to it. You also have Splatoon 3 coming out on the Switch. It's Splatoon. You know what it is. Hot squid on squid action. if you know what it is. If you know what it is, you know what it is. If you don't know what it is, you don't care. Also coming out this week, finally, is NBA 2K23 on everything. And much like Splatoon, it's NBA. You know what it is. And that wrap things up. Thank you all for showing up. This has been GamePoints episode 326, and we do stream live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time right here at twitch.tv/GamePoints, where so many of you can join the chat. Had a decently busy chat today, so thank you all very much for that. But if you can't join us live, I understand. You can also watch this at a myriad of video hosting platforms, YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, etc. You can also join our Discord, link provided down there, or you can follow me at CapitalistPig21 on the cesspool that is Twitter. I do stream throughout the week as well, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and the best time to know when I go live is, of course, to follow, which helps the stream more than you might think. And speaking of that, you know what streamers want when it comes to support. Follows, bits, shares, likes, all that good stuff. Whatever button they have you click wherever you're watching this, do so if you want to support the stream. Anyways, I'm out of here. Thank you all for showing up. Until next week, stay safe and take care.